What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Special guest today. It's Rick Spielman, former GM of the Minnesota Vikings. He was with the Vikings since 2006, making all their moves, some very fascinating moves over the course of time, too. He's seen it all. He knows it all. And he today helps talk some of you Patriots fans, maybe some of the media too, off the ledge as to what New England is doing. And he answers the question that's been nagging at all of us. Is the cap really crap? So without further ado, enjoy yourself some Rick Spielman. All right, we are happy to be joined by one of the longtime NFL general managers and good guys. It's Rick Spielman, most recently with the Minnesota Vikings. Rick, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me on, Tom. I've always wanted to come on your show, but you never invited me before. So this is an honor and a pleasure, and look forward to it.
See, that's the part where Rick lies with that nice smile and straight face. And that's the type of thing he'll do, because I'm going to recount for you folks, or actually Rick will, what happened when Matt Castle called you back as a free agent when you were courting him. Do you remember how you answered the phone?
No, I do not. Although Matt did an unbelievable job for us, and what a leader he was. The only thing I do remember on Matt was when we signed him, he was a starter, and Teddy Bridgewater, we had just drafted as Teddy Bridgewater was his backup, and then Matt got hurt in that New Orleans game, and then Teddy came in, and then Teddy ended up being a starter. But what a pro he was, not only on the field, his leadership in the locker room, how guys gravitated to him, but what he stood for, him and his family off the field as well. So I am trying to prelude anything that's going to come about that I probably said negative.
Nope, you guys are going to like this. So I talked to Matt on Tuesday morning. I said, so I'm going to talk to Rick Spielman later. He goes, oh, I love Rick. You know what Rick did? He left me a message, called my agent, asked me to call him. I call Rick, and he goes, Domino's Pizza, would you like to hear our specials today? He's like, oh my God, I got the wrong number. Sorry about that. No, it's Rick Spielman.
And I still didn't get a Domino's Pizza from him.
See?
So tell him next time you talk to him, he owes me one.
We'll get him pizza. Very easy. We're both going to go down to Nashville. You, me, Matt, we'll play golf. We'll have a good time. Listen to some country music. All right, let's cut to the chase. And I think that what we're watching here league-wide, and also as it pertains to the Patriots, has been really interesting. We've seen almost a philosophical change that seems to be taking root among teams in the last few years, Rick. Draft picks seem to be a little less valued. Salary cap is a little less feared. You see teams like the Rams have done it. The Raiders did it with Devontae Adams. The Bears did it a few years ago with Khalil Mack. The Browns just did it with acquiring Deshaun Watson, where they just burned their draft picks and gave huge deals or took on huge deals with guys. Are teams really pushing their chips into the middle of the table with any established player under the age of 30? Is there a philosophical shift?
Yeah, no, there's a couple of things I'd like to point out on that. One, draft picks are extremely valued because that's your only currency. And the only way to do these type of deals is to have enough draft capital. And just to give you an example of that, a close friend of mine and confident of mine over the past 25 years before I went out to Denver, when George Payton made the Russell Wilson trade. And, everybody was talking about the draft capital that he had to give up. He gave up some players. But the thing to point out that he made that Von Miller trade, which was great for them because using that draft capital along with what he already accumulated what enabled him to go out and get a Russell Wilson. And it helped the Rams, and Les Snead did a phenomenal job. And I give a lot of credit to McVay for being able to take these guys in at certain points, especially towards the end of the season. Odell Beckham Jr., Von Miller, all these guys came in and weren't part of the program, but they did a phenomenal job integrating these guys into their system, understanding what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then going ahead and utilizing them to their strengths. And it ended up getting them a Super Bowl win. But in George Payton's situation, when he made the Russell Wilson trade, there's a couple things. The players that he gave up, I think he gave up 2 young players, but both were going into the last year of their contracts. So I don't know if he was going to be able to extend them or not. 2 of the 3 players that he traded. But you also
Noah Fant being one of them, tight end. Yep.
Yeah, it was Fant. I think it was Shelby. That was a 30-year-old defensive lineman, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. But the other thing that is so critical in this is that the Denver Broncos are for sale, and all of a sudden you're trying to get whatever that franchise is going to cost, $3 billion. When you're able to pull off a trade like that and bring a Russell Wilson in, hey, we're the Denver Broncos, and Russell Wilson is our quarterback, who's going to be a potential future Hall of Famer going forward. How much did the value of that organization or franchise increase? Is that 2 million, 200 million, 300 million, 500 million? So you have to look at like a lot of different angles on this. So, okay, I gave up whatever draft capital I did, but I just increased the franchise value, and I still have 9 picks left in the draft. And I know what type of a job George and his staff do as far as evaluating talent, and they're still going to be able to add to their roster through this draft with the 9 draft picks.
Plus, they're in an interesting spot as well, and it's almost cyclical. And I think people here in New England are having a hard time, myself included, media included, getting their brains around the down cycle, rebuild cycle that the Patriots may be in right now after 20 years of avoiding kind of a profound rebuild. If Denver's built to win, they have some really good players offensively and defensively. The Patriots right now are in the midst of a reboot post-Brady. They spent a lot of money and they made a lot of aggressive moves like Denver would have made or the Rams would have made to add players in the course of the season, but they haven't drafted really well. It's beyond argument, so we don't have to really tiptoe around that, but they're not in a position right now maybe where they would be shopping for top of the line players.
Well, the only thing I would disagree with you on, if I can do so with all due respect, last year was the first year that I can recall that New England was very aggressive in free agency. I think that first day of free agency, I mean, they signed the pass rusher, they signed a couple. I think they signed, if I recall, maybe 12 or 13 total players to come in post Tom Brady. Then they went ahead and drafted their future quarterback in Matt Jones. So the one thing that you have to remember, they weren't as aggressive this year because of all the contracts and all the players that they went out and did last year. So the other thing to also take into account is most of these guys did contribute to New England last year. But usually, just like rookies, some of these UFAs that come in, they really hit stride in their second year after they've especially the New England way and the way Coach Belichick runs it. I mean, you have to adapt because it's been so successful. So a lot of those guys coming in have never experienced that way before, which has won multiple Super Bowls. And so they're adjusting the first year there. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of these guys that they signed last year excel going into their second year, along with the rookie quarterback.
And I wholly agree with that. I think Jonnu Smith is kind of the linchpin to their 2022 season. He's a player that they didn't have a lot of cap and base salary investment in last year. Now it's really big, and the next year after it's really big. He's the Swiss Army knife that you hope to do some things around. He didn't contribute much. So boom, it's him. Aguilar, they have a trap door from Aguilar. They hit on Bourne. They've already hit on Jacoby Myers. So, I think they hit mostly on Judon. I think
they got a pretty good running back crew too.
100%.
Yeah.
But what's weird is, and this is what's driving people back crap out here. Why would you move on from Shaq Mason and Kyle Van Noy when they were 2 of your more productive 2021 contributors? Plus, with the move on of Josh McDaniels to Oakland and some of the nebulous aspects of the coaching staff on defense, I think people are going, I don't have a problem with the lack of shopping in 2022, because your point is excellent and I agree with it. And I think a lot of folks do. It's the big picture of, are you getting better or are you getting worse? And it doesn't feel like in this immediate, as much as they got better in 2021, there's a feeling of treading water or maybe sinking under.
Right. And a lot of people outside, including the media, Okay, I don't know what the date is. It's at March 21st.
We'll look at a March 2-1, first day of spring, I think.
Okay. Actually, it was yesterday, I believe, but don't worry about it.
Guys, argumentative.
But I don't think the NFL season starts till September.
Oh, Bill loves doing that. Bill loves doing it. I don't think we have.
But there's a lot of things that can still happen between now and then. But I also, not fully understanding how every contract is written and how they could potentially move money out. And I'll get into your cap question here in a little bit. But they must feel pretty confident in some of the guys that didn't play. They're going to have to step up and fill roles. I mean, they lost Thuney last year as well up there on the offensive. There was another critical piece, but they must feel pretty confident. They must feel pretty confident in some of these guys in the draft. And who knows where the secondary market goes or potential other trades that will happen between now and the draft. Usually, once you get past the draft, that's going to be most of your moves that you have made to improve your roster going into the following season. So there's a lot of time left. I mean, everybody that didn't get in the arms race, or you want to call it the heavyweight boxing match out in the AFC West, it was like interesting to watch that Denver does a Russell Wilson trade. Then the Chargers go and get JC Jackson, and then the Raiders counter, and they're all countering each other, trying to get caught up with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think that you have to be a little patient because there's no question about Coach Belichick's track record and the success that he has had there. And I truly believe all of a sudden in one offseason, you don't all of a sudden go from smart to dumb. But I know
agree.
How quickly people are to judge that as well.
You know that we're hardwired, whether it be media or fans, to look from the outside in and just backseat drive the whole thing and say, watch out for that bump. You're gonna go off the road. We're gonna get a ticket. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. How did you, as a decision maker and a team builder and the face in many cases of the personnel department of the franchise, talk the fans and media off the ledge? Because Bill doesn't really bother to do it in large part because he doesn't have to do it, because in large part he can look and say scoreboard. But
right.
Explain how you used to approach that. And are we disloyal or unappreciative to say, hey, what the hell's going on down there?
I think the biggest thing is maybe the fans of the New England Patriots, who have a great fan base up there, great media coverage, maybe a little disappointed the way the season ended last year. I believe they lost 3 out of the 4. It wasn't a very competitive game in a wild card game against the Buffalo Bills, which is an arch nemesis now in that division. So fans sometimes have that bad taste in their mouth, and that carries on through the off season. But internally, sometimes you just have to let everybody say what they're saying on the outside, knowing that you have a plan in place, that you're going to stick to that plan. You're going to be disciplined on how you're going to get your team better going into the 2022 season. And we're not going to judge on where we are today. We're going to judge on where we are when we get on the field and when we have to win ball games on Sundays next year.
There's a saying up here in Boston coined by a very successful media personality, Mike Felger, who covered the NFL for a long time. The cap is crap, because the Patriots have been so economically sound and they've been such a middle-class, strong team that they've been averse to spending a lot and taking those big chances against the cap. Is the cap suddenly crap because fewer teams are more economically conscious? You talk to me about that. You get the question. I'm not going to keep babbling on.
Yeah, no. Cap is I guess you have to look at cap as an accounting tool. What you have to look at is cash spent. Is it cash spent to the cap? Some ownership groups, will say, hey, our budget this year, if the cap is, I don't know what it is this year. It can't
210 is overall.
Right. So, okay, you can spend your total roster and the amount of money you're going to spend in this year is $210 million. But some of the teams and some of the aggressive moves that you're seeing out there okay, they may spend a lot more cash than what the cap is. And you can do that by the accounting mechanisms that involve the cap. So another ownership, and our ownership in Minnesota was great. We were able to spend maybe 10 million over the cap every year. And then you have to have a creative cap person, male or female, who's running it. So, as you do these deals, okay, I understand we can put the most competitive team we can on the field this year, okay, but you have to cap plan for the future years. And okay, in 2023, what's our cap going to look like? What's our roster potentially going to look like? Okay, do we have young players that we want to make sure that we have enough money, both cash and cap, to spend to make sure we don't lose them? One of our philosophies that I always thought was, if you can draft well enough, and I think we did multiple extensions on guys from Barr to Kendricks to Harrison Smith, Adam Thielens of the world. We did Stephon Diggs before we traded him to Buffalo. We did Dalvin Cook. We always tried to keep our own if we were drafting well, because those are the guys that the best. Those are the coaches that have developed those guys. The coaches know what they're like in meetings, what their work ethic is, how they play on Sundays. So hopefully, if you're drafting well, that's where you're going to spend your money. But
can I interject and give you a wild stat?
Yep.
The Patriots haven't re-signed one of their own unrestricted free agents, except for franchising Tooney, in like 8 years, meaning a first round pick.
So what I would say to that is, just thinking of that, and if I'm putting on, guesstimating what they're thinking, is when they lose these players, okay, what is the value of the compensatory picks coming back to them? And they going to trust themselves in being able to replace who they're losing with a lot of those compensatory picks to fill those needs. Plus, you're also getting them at a cheaper cost than you are if you extended or kept some of those guys that they let go.
And in a Tooney instance, like an instance with Tooney, you had Mike Onwenu, you had Ted Karras, who you re-signed. Both of those guys held down that position. Right. J.C. Jackson, I think their pockets are turned a little bit inside out. But when Malcolm Butler was allowed to leave, they were able to replace him with Stephon Gilmore, who they paid a premium for. So it is more multi-tiered. Is it possible to point at cash spending in a particular year and determine whether or not a team is aggressive?
Well, I think it's where the team is at. If it's a first-year GM, first-year head coach, and they're going to have the ownership, the fans may be a little bit more patient to let them put things together and to try to get it moving forward. But if you've been there a couple of years, you've always been at the playoffs or right at the edge of the playoffs, or like in our situation, we always hovered at the playoffs or in the playoffs. We went twice to the NFC Championship game, but never got over the hump. At some point, though, people get impatient, and then, okay, because I have a great relationship with a lot of people in that building in the Minnesota Vikings, and I still love all those people. And I have a great relationship with the ownership there, the Wilf family, and I still do, and I always will, because I always cherish the 16 years that I was there and how they treated me and their family. But I also respect that decision that they had to make. And so we'll see where that goes going forward. But I think it depends on, the Los Angeles Rams, a great example, kind of did something out of the norm. And I give a lot of credit to Les Snead. I give a lot of credit to Sean McVay for them bringing in that type of talent. The trade for the Von Miller, to go get Odell Beckham Jr. And to integrate them into their system without having an off season, an OTA, a training camp. And I thought they did phenomenal, understanding what each player's strengths and weaknesses were, and adjusting to make sure that they were highlighting their strengths. And I think Coach Belichick, I believe, did that last year. I think they started out, with the young quarterback, and all of a sudden Coach Belichick is smart and as respected as he is, made the adjustments, and they ran off 7 in a row, I believe, wins. So that's a great job by a coaching staffs, those two examples there of figuring out who your people are. Sometimes you don't, especially when you have so many new players, you don't really understand fully their strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes you get to the third and fourth week of the season. Okay, now we know this guy. Okay, we had 3 preseason games last year, but they maybe played 10, 15 snaps at the most, or 20 snaps. But preseason speed of the game and regular season speed of the game is 2 different things. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure out what each player's strengths and weaknesses are, and then how we going to adjust our system to the players we have on our roster.
And it's funny because the ease with which the Tampa Bay Buccaneers add Tom Brady or Antonio Brown or Rob Gronkowski and those 3 guys figure into a Super Bowl victory, or the ease with which the Rams add Matt Stafford and already have Jalen Ramsey, who they plucked, and then, Miller, as you mentioned, and OBJ, and you lose Robert Woods, and there's not even a blip, and they win a Super Bowl. I think people are now of the mind that you can go down and just, hey, man, just go. Just get in the store, for God's sake.
Yeah, no, it's not as simple as that. But Cooper Kupp's a pretty good addition on that roster as well.
Yeah, poor Cooper. I left him out. I think Patriots fans and our media is in a weird spot. We keep saying to ourselves, my God, look at all the teams in the AFC who are passing the Patriots. And I think we have to reconfigure our thoughts in that. Don't worry about Kansas City. No. Don't worry about the Bengals right now. Worry about Buffalo. Because winning your division is job one, and the Patriots should be preparing to beat that team. What's your feeling on that, Rick?
Yeah, your number one goal and your first goal is to win that division. And when you're going through your roster planning, you have to look at, okay, we have to play these teams twice. So how are we matching up personnel-wise versus the Buffalo Bills, versus the Miami Dolphins, versus the New York Jets? And where do we have to improve to make sure that we can get to the top of that division again? And then usually if you're able to do that, then the rest of it kind of falls in place as long as you stay healthy. You can't predict the injuries and stuff. But the other thing from the New England standpoint, if you look at the progression that Matt Jones made last year, and we scouted him, along with a lot of these other young quarterbacks last year, and he was probably the most NFL ready and prepared player to play. Now, he may not be the most athletic, but when you watched him on big stage games, in the national championship game, in the Iron Bowl, all these games, there was no question of his demeanor, his ability to perform in pressure situations. Now, it's a big jump for a rookie to come in. And if you look at the Joe Burrows of the world, even look what he did from year 1 to year 2, and he was coming off ACL. So I would be very encouraged if I was a New England Patriots fan and media, the step that Matt Jones is going to take next year for your ball club.
Is it premature for the Patriots to start considering, all right, well, Mac performed that well as a first-year player. We figure he's probably going to be good in his second year as well. Should we start budgeting for the future with this player? Because look at what's happening with quarterbacks trying to get to the table and say, hey, I need to start making $40 million a year. Should the Patriots start paying attention to that?
I don't know. It's because it's only going into a second year. They have the 4-year contract with a 5th-year option. I think at this point in his career, you still want to assess his development and where he goes. Does he take another step in 22? Does he take another step after that? Usually after a rookie, you have a 3-year snapshot of that.
Yep.
And where his trajectory is going. Like year 4, okay, we're going to have to really start buckling up, and we're going to have to pay this quarterback because he's our franchise quarterback for years to come. And those are hard to find. I remember we went through that same scenario when we drafted Teddy Bridgewater. So year 1, he came in. We talked about earlier when he took over for Matt, when Matt got injured in that New Orleans game, and how he progressed as a rookie. Year 2, he got us into the playoff game, and we lost in that Ice Bowl against Seattle because we missed the 23-yard field goal. Not that I still remember that, at minus 17-degree weather.
Remember.
And then year 3, we really thought that he was going to take off. And then all of a sudden, we're out there 8 days before our opener. He had a great preseason, and he has a significant knee injury that was non-contact in practice. So that changed the whole dynamic. So that's why, you're monitoring that now, but you don't know of a situation like that. And
Right.
God forbid that ever happened to Jones. You hope that that's why you stay patient as you go through this process, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, it does. And I'm not saying, hey, the Patriots should slide him a 5-year, $200 million extension. At this point, it's just, it accelerates so quickly, it seems. And whether it's Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield, or Lamar Jackson, once year 4 comes and there's no progress, the guy starts going, hey, what's going on over there?
That's
Is Teddy Bridgewater one of the
decision?
Say it again.
Heading into year 4 will be where your decision is.
Rick, was the Teddy Bridgewater situation one of the more heartbreaking things that you experienced in sports?
Unbelievable. I don't know how to explain that feeling. I know when you see, and I was out at practice when that happened, and you see players just turning their head and just tears coming on the field, because not only was Teddy, we thought was going to be a very good quarterback in this league, and that's why we drafted him. But when you seen the direction his leg was pointed when he dislocated it, phenomenal job, by the way, shout out to Eric Sugarman and our medical staff, because they probably saved his leg on how quickly, and our doctors on how quickly they responded to that. But what he meant, not only on the field, but his leadership and how people gravitated to him, and the players did in that locker room. And there was no question, he wasn't a loud, boisterous leader, but he had a presence to him and an aura to him that just gravitated people that, yeah, this guy's our leader and we want to play for him. But he, not only that, but he was such a phenomenal representative of our organization out in the community as well. And that's something that, I made the trade for Bradford because we had a good football team that year, and tried to recover. Again, maybe to your theory that draft picks don't matter, but that is the only capital we had, to try to get someone who was a very good quarterback, just had an injury.
But you had a championship level team.
Correct. And then the following year, we lose, Sam Bradford gets hurt, and Case Keenum has the year of his lifetime.
Yep.
And we end up losing in the NFC Championship game, where we got beat pretty badly by Philly, who went on, to win a Super Bowl and beat the Patriots that year in our stadium.
You've been in the NFL, whether it be Dolphins or Vikings, or even prior to that, the years and years that you've been doing it.
30 plus years.
30 plus. Is this year, being away from the internal workings of a team on a day-to-day basis, a good reboot, or is it painful?
I would say it's been a real positive for me, to be honest with you. It's been a real positive for my family. Everything that I have missed, because you're going 7 days a week, even off in the off season, you get ready for the draft, for free agency, you're at all these. And I loved every aspect of the job that I did. And no one was ever going to, I always took pride in no one was ever going to outwork me or spend more time in the office. And there's always more tape to watch, or there's always more things to do, this and that. And for the first time, I think, and me and my wife been married going on 34 years now, that I actually am home. And we adopted 6 kids. Our youngest is 20 years old, and she's a special needs daughter. And, I went, and me and her went to work out, and took her to a health club. We walked on the treadmill, did some rubber band things on which she was capable of doing. And it was like, sometimes you just catch your breath and said, this is what I've missed as a dad. This is what I've missed as a father. And just enjoying some of the things, that knowing that how much your family has sacrificed for you. That's the thing that we discuss now. Is it time for me to start sacrificing and doing things for my family? And I've been really enjoying doing shows like this. I've done a ton of them. I've got a few already opportunities out there that I'm looking forward to. And we'll just see. But right now, I am really enjoying the reboot. I'm really enjoying the time with my family. And those are things that I don't think people realize. And I'm just realizing it now after 30 some years. I love my wife. I love my kids, but how much I missed being a part of their lives. Now they were part of the Vikings lives because I had the boys all the time out as ball boys and at the games. And I've always tried to get to my kids' games, as many as I could, but there's so much you miss. And to have this chance to give back to my family has been incredible. And that's something that I'm really cherishing right now.
Take me into the inner workings of how the Cleveland Browns may have made a decision to make what could be an explosive and damaging PR move to sign an exceptional quarterback in Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think when you look at the overall trade, there's no question about who he is as a football player and what he brings to you on the football field. I think what people don't realize is everything that goes on in those meetings behind the scenes with your ownership group, with your head coach, with all the key decision makers in your organization. And I know when we had to make some tough decisions on some situations that we were potentially going to be in, all that group got together. And what we would discuss is take out the football side. What kind of PR plan are we going to have if this player comes into our building? If it's something in a situation like a Deshaun Watson situation, and I know that there's no criminal charges, but there's still civil lawsuits out there that have to be addressed. How do the females in your building feel? Also, have you or the ownership group or the business side, have you talked to our sponsors? Have you talked to our partners? Are we going to lose any partnerships or sponsor money because we make this trade? So there's a lot of other things that have to go into it, and trades happen so fast. You know, it was like all of a sudden Cleveland was out, but all of a sudden Cleveland got back in.
So they can't vet it.
So, but you're hoping when you start these discussions and there's even a possibility of a Deshaun Watson coming to your organization, and not only the player, but at the position he's in, because he's the face of your franchise for what you're going to pay for him and what you traded for him. But how are we going to make sure that we address it with everybody? So you're going to do that. I would think in my situation, we always did that when we knew there was any possibility of making a potential trade for a Deshaun Watson type situation. So we addressed the business side, we had, you know, the ownership, the PR, everything was kind of talked about before we proceeded. And if we decided we're good, we checked all the boxes in those areas, then we went on and would have made a trade.
If you were in that position and the women in the building so stridently opposed it, I'm talking about women in marketing, production, digital, perhaps even on your coaching staff, would that alter a view?
That I think you have to take all that into account. And I don't know. I mean, we're trying to deal with a hypothetical here.
100%.
So that's a little difficult for me to deal in a hypothetical if you don't know all of the facts to it. But if they did all of that and they checked every box, what we just discussed, and everybody was on board, and that's going to change your franchise. But, you know, looking at the outside, I mean, you're going to have a lot of people, regardless of if all those boxes were checked internally, you're going to have to deal with a lot of situations outside. And just me reading it through the internet and a lot of things that are being reported and the different opinions on this move, okay, you're going to have to vet through that. But then the question is, okay, we'll get through this rough part, but what if 3 or 4 years from now, he takes us and win a Super Bowl? Do the fans, do the people out there all of a sudden say, well, okay, blah, 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 we won a Super Bowl. Is that the most important thing? Is that why we're in this business? So,
and that's what's so fascinating is, are you a steward to the community, an extension of the community, or are you a business? And, as you pointed out with the Russell Wilson deal and the Denver Broncos, there's a number, there's a bottom line, there's a financial aspect. So, Rick, again, thank you so much for your time and your insight.
thank you.
All right, I had a blast. He's a lot of fun. Hopefully we can get him on again later in the week. We're going to get our guy Castle in here to talk a little bit about what the Patriots have been up to and what he foresees for scheme. Next week we'll be down at the owners' meetings, and we're going to get plenty of intel from there, league-wide, and of course Patriots-centric. Speaking of Patriots-centric, the next Pats podcast, Senator Phil Perry, he talks to Greg Cosell, one of the foremost talent evaluators, about this year's crop of draftable wide receivers. So give that a listen. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.